disproportionately harmed communities of color, low-income, and indigenous communities. Senator Booker knows long before Columbus arrived on our shores, indigenous people were calling this land home. Let's take a look back at the past. 40 miles north of Newark is Mahwah, New Jersey. Once the ancestral home of the Ramapough and Lenape, these lands are still sacred to the people who descended from these tribes, even if suburban developments and municipal buildings are creeping into the hills. We've been invited today to meet some of the younger members. They now keep their traditions alive through gatherings like this one. This dedicated group is here to play games, share stories, and give me a front row seat along the way. Starting with 7th generation Keisha, a 26-year-old educator and dynamo who is wise beyond her years.
Fire is sacred in the sense that it holds energy, it gives energy, but it's also a community thing, the same way food is. This is something that I would say we used to do often as a community, and we're trying to get back to that. In a lot of ways, this is the start of a new fire, and I think we've lost a lot of elders across Indian country and across Turtle Island right now, and we need new fires because we're losing some older ones.
And Two Clouds of the Turtle Clan, who is more than enthusiastic when it comes to talking about his culture.
I'm gonna show you how to chop wood like a mountain man.
I don't think I'm dressed to be a mountain man today.
It doesn't matter what you're wearing, it's about the spirit that moves it. When you bring it down, allow the gravity in its own weight. And you bend down yourself, and that'll split the wood.
Nice.
So, so it's like that, right?
Yeah.
All right. Boom. I feel like with Native American people, there's no waste. Everything is used, everything has a purpose. What were you guys really eating back then?
Everything from bear, deer, beaver, groundhog, you know.
You're eating groundhog right now?
Don't knock it till you try it. Groundhog stew with a nice chunk of potatoes and carrots in a crock pot. The
What
meat
does a
falls off.
groundhog taste like?
Groundhog.
Groundhog is not on the menu today, but Keisha is showing me how they'd hunt for similar game, the addle-addle.
So that little almond-looking notch goes right into the hole. You want to bring your hand to the handle and then your pointer and thumb to the spear and hold them in place.
This is specifically for hunting.
Yes.
Got it.
So envision what animal you need right now.
Okay, my enemy's got it.
Okay, that works too. Nice. That's the one. You see? You can feel it, right? You can feel it.
Learning how the Ramapough got their food thousands of years ago is fascinating, and these younger generations are so eager to carry on these early traditions. Most Native American tribes have been kicked off their land. Many were ousted from the eastern part of the country and forced westward by white settlers. Keisha was generous enough to escort me around the land that means more to them than we'll ever know.
Give me Native American 101, because we barely were taught. We know wigwams and we know Cherokee, and we don't mean Jeep Grand Cherokee.
It all starts with the land. That's important because regardless of where you're born, you are on indigenous territory. All of my teachings, it starts with being able to connect with the land literally.
Now there have been a lot of different legislations to teach these different cultures, but there's no law in the books to teach Native American culture.
Not federally that I'm aware of, no. It's heartbreaking and it's also really concerning because that's where the mentality of natives don't exist anymore comes from. Being indigenous is also a political stance in a lot of ways. You learn how to dance and you learn these stories for the people that can't do it anymore. There are a lot of nuances, I guess, in ways to what indigeneity looks like. And that indigeneity has been forced to be in one bubble, in one box. And I think my generation and all of the generations after me, we're really demanding that that box be erased.
We made it back to the bonfire, just in time to meet the elders.
I'm Nigerian. I grew up in all-white neighborhoods and schools. I was the lonely chocolate chip. And if it were not for my family and the foods that we made and all that, I would not have a tie to it. So where does that thirst for it come from?
That has been my passion all my life, to teach the children, and we're responsible for the next 7 generations. And my elders taught me, so I feel the responsibility to teach the younger one.
And one of the biggest lessons is traditional Native American cuisine. I was lucky enough to join Carla and Keisha in the kitchen. First item on the menu, wild rice. Wild rice is one of the few foods from the ancient indigenous diet that we still prepare in its original form today.
Wild rice, or menumen, it means good berry in Ojibwe, and essentially it is the berry portion of the wild grasses and the sedges around riverbeds. It starts off pretty black and then it slowly turns like a reddish brown, and as the skin of the rice more or less starts to open, it almost looks like oatmeal.
While Keisha is stirring up a feast, Carla is cooking fry bread, a dish that reflects the colonial imprint that the tribes have come to embrace. For them, it's a symbol of overcoming. Before it became a powwow and festival favorite, fry bread was a food of necessity and survival. It can be traced back to the Navajo tribe as early as the late 1800s, when the United States government forcibly moved indigenous peoples to remote reserves, which were often food deserts. So, Native Americans did what they do best, made it work, and adapted using what the government rationed.
So they would give you some flour,
Right.
a
little bit of salt.
a little bit of salt, some sort of lard,
Right.
and make it work.
That's it.
And you made it work.
We did, and that's what we're still doing. We're still making it work.
In Nigerian culture, we make something called puff puff when it's
yes.
like, so we usually make those, celebratory times. So would
Right.
you consider fry bread like a celebratory dish?
Basically, yeah. It's kind of a remembrance of where we came from. We did what we had to do to survive. We're still doing what we have to do to survive. It helped us to get through all of those tough times. So it's something to be celebrated to a point, because without it, a lot of us wouldn't be here. And that's part of your culture, part of your traditions, and part of your history.
To better learn this tradition and history, I hopped to the other side of the counter and did some frying myself.
Roll it in flour so that you're able to use it without
it's
sticking
pliable.
to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Guess you guys do the same thing, right?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. When we do it, we would like kind of squeeze it
Yeah.
and like squeeze it into it. Yeah. So squeeze the flour.
Just kind of stretch it out after, kind of like a little pizza.
What do you think? Good enough?
Good.
All right. We'll drop it on
They don't
in.
have to be round, they just
Not
go
to be
where they are.
perfect. Well, thank you for the lesson, Carl. I appreciate it. I can't wait to eat it.
Burners burning, choppers chopping, and with the meat stewing, tribal member Owl shows me something significant that has stood on their land for thousands of years.
We call it in the English language, we call it cradle rock. So this is a wonder of the ancient world. When you see it from a distance, you don't really necessarily see that it's perched on 4 smaller stones. So this stone is about 5,000 or 10,000 years old. And it was a marker put here by the ancients.
For what purpose?
It appears to be related to underground water flows. A lot of these features on the surface here are meant to show where water was flowing and how water was moving, because the ancients had a certain wisdom that I feel we've lost in the modern world, is that we have to be very conscious of where our water comes from.
What do you think it says that still today, that this rock still remains? What do you think that says about your people?
We're resilient, and that we are survivors, and that we have a message as Ramapough people to bring to the world still. I think that's what these sacred stones say, the sacred sites, is, while we are definitely concerned about where we're going into the future, that we need to remember our connection to the past.
After a sage session to cleanse the room, Owl and I are back. And like many cultures around the state, this meal, cornbread, fry bread, sweet potato, corn and beans, wild rice, and stewed pork, started with a prayer.
Wallamoose walkin', walk, ni olangumatit, walk, ni wikian. Anashik, 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 aho.
Oh.
Thank you all for sharing this food together and being here. Anashik.
And thank you, Carla, for preparing. It looks really good. Okay.
Kind of fruity, huh?
Kind of fruity, but tender.
What's nice about it is that you don't have it bogged down with other spices, so you actually taste what the food is. And you're tasting something that was the same taste that ancestors would have had.
Do we eat like this all the time?
When we're doing this as a community, yeah. our whole church becomes a kitchen. And it's amazing the conversations that you have in a kitchen. Because not everybody's cooking this in their house, we have to be honest. You know, kids are more apt to go to... Carla does. And that's why Carla's always giving her leftovers to people because we don't have it.
So are you like whipping up this fry bread every day? And
Not every day, no. Every 2 weeks I'll probably make like, I was like, hey, you guys want fried bread tacos? And it's like all the hard work that you put into the bread because you gotta knead it. It's so worth it at the end. It's just way fresher and it's way better and it tastes way better. It's like you put love in it.
And that's what makes this food, this plate right here, so special because it's not something I get every day. It's not something I learn every day. This is something I take home and share with my family because look what I had today.
so you would say the food anchors the community.
Food anchors.
Yeah, I mean, it's all interconnected, like with the language as well. There's stories about the corn and the strawberries. They are part of the culture and the language. The Hudson and the Muncie language is called Mahikanachuk, the river that flows both ways. You know, what we're doing to the fish affects us.
But it's deeper than that. It's the water that runs and the fish that swim in that water, and it's the plants that benefit from that water, and it's the plants that benefit from the water that's contaminated.
From 1967 to 1974, a subsidiary of the Ford Motor Company disposed of toxic waste, including car parts and paint sludge, at a nearby Ringwood landfill. Today, it's a Superfund site, one of the over 114 in New Jersey. But before the cleanup efforts, the pollution changed some of the aspects of this tight-knit community.
Our water source was the reservoir in Hilburn, and the reservoir was right next to the dump. So that caused a lot of health issues on every house down our street. Everybody was related. Somebody has died from cancer in every single house.
Now, was there sort of like a straying away from food or these types of foods because who knew what was in it?
We stopped eating from the land. It's changed what we eat. It's changed how we eat. You get to a point where you're trying to figure out what's going to keep you healthy. And everybody's sort of trying something different.
And this type of setback makes it all the more important that they pass on their food knowledge and traditions to the next generation.
Being that we're a Native American church, we always include our children, our young adults. We make them get involved in everything so they know our traditional foods. They know the things that we do.
And through food, there's memory. So when we're having good memories when we're kids and we get older, it's like, oh, I remember doing this as a child. Like my mom and my grandmother would have me in the kitchen peeling beans and where I'm at now, we're in the city. So there isn't any of this. So I'll drive from Newark, East Orange, all the way to Mawa just for my son to see a different world, a different part of our own culture.
I've never really heard of a Native American restaurant in New Jersey or anything like that.
We can start one.
I was going to say, when are we going to start the Native American restaurant?
I'm ready.
I know you're ready, Carla.
I was like, well, do we have any Native American restaurants around here? So I look it up, and I'm like, well, we don't have anything. I said, I guess I'll be the first. I'm going to open a food truck and have that. Really? So I could. I'm working on it.
The Ramapough people have endured so much, but what's truly endured is their effort to keep the spirit of their culture alive, right here in New Jersey.
We always had open door policy too. I could walk in his house and eat. I could walk in his house and eat. I could walk in her house and eat. You didn't need an invitation.
It's for
You were there.
And
We're all family.
I still do
So
that.
do I count as family now?
Absolutely.
Okay, I need a couple to-go plates. I need a
I
couple
got some
to-go
over there,
boxes.
just like this.
And we're ready to go. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
appreciate having me.
From New Jersey's proudest politician to a group of people whose culture and wisdom runs deeper than the trees are tall, I've received a history lesson and hope for the future. And I just hope I can remember that fry bread recipe.
No, not such a sweetness from their sugar, Carla.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you walk too loud. I heard your footsteps in the leaves.
Promotional support provided by Edible Jersey, a quarterly magazine and online publication celebrating the local food of the Garden State for 15 years.